That's what you mean.
I see where they're playing. Actually, they are playing one of our champions coming out of the MEAC. So good luck.
I don't know, Bernie, after UMBC pulled off that 15/1 a few years ago, I think it really is March Madness, and you never know.
You know, we're so
Absolutely.
excited. I serve on the NCAA Board of Governors, and so this time last year, a week or so, was the biggest decision that we've ever made, which was to cancel March Madness. And so throughout the year, we've been planning for what will March Madness look like this year. And I must admit, our staff there, under the direction of Mark Embry, have done a great job of moving all of those games in Annapolis. We grappled with that for about 4 or 5 months. What would that look like? And so we are very optimistic now that these student athletes who, well, I mean, just to look across the entire Division 1, 2, 3 over the last year or so, look at the devastation that the student athletes have experienced, and then to see at least an opportunity for them to get back to playing has just been terrific.
Yes, and as you know, every year in March, instead of being March Madness NCAA, it easily is Annapolis March Madness, but we'll move through that too. So I think we have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. We have our quorum is here, so let's check, see if anybody have any additions to the agenda they'd like to add. If not, then could I have approval of the December minutes?
I so move.
Second. Discussion or corrections? Debbie's been doing a really good job on doing this. I appreciate all her work and putting these meetings together too, and then getting them down into minutes as we need. So all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward. Emily, you want to kick it off?
Absolutely, sure. So good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. We have a couple of presenters joining us today to discuss schools for national service. So let me just get to it. Let me introduce Nicole from the Governor's Office of Public Service, and John Polinsky, who works with these organizations and can provide the presentation. So I'll turn the time over to both of you. You should be able to share your screen by clicking one of the buttons below. If we have any problems, I can play back up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dow. Thank you for inviting us. So even though my screen says Nicole, please call me Nikki. I am the director of the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism, and I have our wonderful commissioner with us today, John Polinsky, who's chair of the Public Policy Committee and just an all-out awesome dude. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Give me 1 second. And I'm going to, let's see. So we're going to do this presenter mode that, all right. And I just need to move some things around on my screen. 1 second. So I'll just kind of, so what we're sharing with you today is an initiative from AmeriCorps, the agency formerly known as the Corporation for National and Community Service. Let me move this. And they are relaunching their I don't recall what the original campaign was for schools of national service, but that's what we're going to present you today. And now I'm all ready and have my screen set up. So we're the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism, and we were created in 1994 in pursuant of the National and Community Service Trust Act of 1993. So we're the Maryland State Service Commission, and there's 52 of us across the country. State service commissions exist in federal legislation as a pass-through of federal AmeriCorps funding. We also marshal volunteer resources and meet community needs. For the purpose of this conversation, we're going to stay focused on the AmeriCorps program, which you can think of as the domestic Peace Corps. Members commit to a term of service anywhere between 317 hours or 3 months to 1 year. They deliver direct service to address our community's most pressing needs, from education to environment. At this current time, they are an integral part of the COVID-19 response, pivoting their service from planting trees and mentoring students in person to supporting students to lessen the learning loss, and also food delivery. We're also working directly with the Maryland Department of Health to process volunteers. AmeriCorps members are civic-minded, mission-driven individuals, and they're exactly the people you want at your institutions. As an AmeriCorps alum myself, and as someone who has supervised and managed more than 100 members, I can personally attest that these individuals have purpose, pay attention to details, and know how to get things done. And that's because that's kind of the AmeriCorps unofficial tagline. So Schools for National Service are a group of elite and distinguished institutions who value national service and recognize the uniqueness of individuals who have committed to complete a term of service. Every year, 75,000 AmeriCorps members become alumni. In 2019, Maryland had about 1,800 members serving. Maryland had more, and as these alums were looking to their next opportunity, many of them are going back to school, some to get their undergraduate, many to go into a master's program. So Schools of National Service reward alumni for their service and are included in the National AmeriCorps Schools of National Service database, and your school can be easily accessed by these alumni. Let me go to, so that's just the 30,000 view, the 30,000-foot view for Schools for National Service. Let me real quickly dive into what AmeriCorps members do. It's always hard to gauge where people might understand what national service and AmeriCorps members are. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples of what AmeriCorps members are doing here in Maryland. They do direct service in our communities, and these are just a few key examples of how members serve. That includes our programs with, we have a program with University of Maryland Baltimore School of Social Work, and these are our Promise Corps members, in which AmeriCorps members provide mentorship to students and families to improve school attendance. AmeriCorps members with Casa de Maryland provide financial literacy, coaching, and tax preparation. AmeriCorps members with the Conservation Corps, Maryland Conservation Corps, in partnership with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, they do trail maintenance and also environmental education. So many of our AmeriCorps members have shifted at least partial focus on food delivery, food preparedness, and other things during the pandemic. So there you go. There's our quick overview of AmeriCorps, and I'm going to kick it over to John.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Again, thanks so much for including us in the meeting this morning. We're excited about this Schools of National Service initiative, as you can probably tell. But so let's give a little bit more background. One of the great things that AmeriCorps members bring to your campus when they come is the Siegel Education Award. Now, if you're an alum like Nikki and me, you work for a year, you get paid generally a very small amount of money, do great service in your community, hopefully, and then you earn an education award. When I served, that education award was worth about $4,700. So when I went back for my master's program, I was able to bring in $4,700 of federal aid to my campus. But now that that education award has been pegged to the value of a maximum Pell Grant. So now each AmeriCorps alum that would come to your campus brings $6,300 if they've done a full year term of service. And one great thing about that is it's flexible. So it doesn't necessarily have to go just to tuition. It can, other educational purposes. I believe I was able to purchase a laptop through it, some room and board. One minor one minor issue with it is that it's still subject to both federal and Maryland tax. That's something we may try to work on in the future. But generally, it's a wonderful thing to bring to campus. Nikki, if you do the next slide, please. And so one of the other parts we want to share with you is, so these are real big federal dollars that AmeriCorps alums bring to our campuses in Maryland. When we look at all the higher ed institutions across the country, you can see that the #1 place in terms of total dollars brought by AmeriCorps alums is Johns Hopkins University, our very own. And then if you look at a state-by-state comparison, next slide, please, Nikki, you can see Maryland is in the top 10 states. Since 1994, we've received $64 million of federal student aid coming to our Maryland universities from AmeriCorps alums. So it's, we feel like it's real money. And next slide, please, Nikki. We also want to kind of activate your competitive juices, if possible, please. We want, as Nikki said, we want every single one of our Maryland colleges and universities to become schools of national service, and we're prepared to help. We want you to know that Virginia Commonwealth, Pitt, even Duke, apologies if there's any Duke alums on here, but we always have to give them a hard time, right? They're all offering considerable benefits as part of this Schools of National Service program, and we want to make sure that our Maryland schools are offering competitive benefits as well. So next slide, please.
I think I take it from here, right? Yes. Okay, I just want to also acknowledge that Secretary Fielder, one of our commissioners who has stepped down from her position, Renee Winsky, I believe that she reached out and kind of gave you the overview on this. So I appreciate you actually recognizing the benefit and the importance of national service and AmeriCorps service in the state of Maryland.
Can I ask a question? I don't want to stop your presentation, but
Absolutely.
I'm not sure whether John or Nikki can answer this. Talked a little bit about, is there an expectation of credit or non-credit achieved for these community service programs? So at the point of bringing in federal monies as well as scholarships, that there's some expectation of either Maryland institutions or other state institutions looking at social services client credits or non-credits toward a degree?
That's a perfect question, and we're actually going to address that in the next couple slides that shows an example of what some of the other universities have done. And honestly, John can speak more to this because he works in the university system. But really, it's the colleges, the universities, the institutions' imagination of how they can support and entice these AmeriCorps members. And so when we're thinking about the AmeriCorps members and why would it benefit your institution to be a school of national service, it's because there's a recruitment advantage to this designation. As I stated earlier, across the country, there's about 75,000 members that are serving, and that number is about to increase since the American Rescue Act was signed last week. They're looking to increase the number of AmeriCorps members to, I believe, about 250,000 over the next several years. So that's a pool of civic-minded, purpose-driven, mission-driven individuals who are already civically engaged and making a difference in their community. And what they're also bringing is our life experience, not as in, you're getting 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds into your institutions, but you're working with individuals who have been out in the field, have done the work, have committed to a year. And honestly, a lot of times the service year is very challenging. And the AmeriCorps members come out on the other side of this transformed. My service year completely transformed me. I never thought that I could do the things that I was able to do during my service year. And I 100% believe that service year is why I'm in this position that I am, which is the director for the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism. And I get to monitor and be engaged with this core of individuals who are extremely focused in solving our globe's most pressing issues. So that's my pitch on why you want AmeriCorps members at your school, and you'll have a wide range of individuals to recruit from. John?
Well, so then, yes, Secretary Fielder, so your question is going exactly where we're headed right now is, as Nikki said, it used to be pretty inflexible what a college or university could offer in order to attract AmeriCorps alums. It was basically just like match the education award with some dollars, which is a big ask in higher ed, certainly. But now the AmeriCorps agency is being very flexible. Universities and colleges can come up with different schema for what makes sense from their own distinct perspectives about offering to entice AmeriCorps alums. So for some people it is, or for some schools it is priority points for academic consideration. Sometimes it's around having kind of special access to certain fellowships on campus due to having served, done a year of national service. There is, just like you said, kind of the academic credit for specific AmeriCorps service, which would probably tend to be kind of in your social work type fields. So the great thing about schools of national service is there are a wide variety of things a school or university could offer, and AmeriCorps seems very open to you offering just about anything. So let's go to the next slide just for a second, Nikki, please. What we want to convey to everyone on the call today is our commission and each of us individually wants to help. We have this kind of stretch goal of trying to get every single Maryland college, university, community college to become a school of national service. And we want to help. And we sort of showing you, I work up at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and I'm just speaking now, not as a University of Maryland, Baltimore employee, just as an individual, but one of the first schools that we talked to about this was our School of Social Work, natural partner in such an effort. And we went through specific options that we thought they would probably already offer, frankly, to AmeriCorps alums. So you, as we said, you make a very small amount of money when you're in your AmeriCorps year. So you might be likely to have a waived application fee anyway. That might be something that the school would approve anyway. So that's kind of an easy, not a huge lift for a university. At the same time, if a student were to be accepted into your program, but then say, I want to defer for a year in order to do a year of service, many of our schools would say yes to that anyway. So that's, again, not a huge lift. We put some other options up there for them, worked with them, and then they chose the options that work best for them, completed the application, and now they are a school of national service. So just so everybody can hear us, we really want to work with you on this. It's not a terribly difficult application, and we're really hoping to make every single school in Maryland, help every single school in Maryland get this distinction and be able to attract some of our amazing AmeriCorps alums.
So we wanted to make this just brief. And again, this is really that 30,000-foot view. There's so much more to explore. And like John said, we are here to work with you. So I encourage you to reach out to me so we can continue the conversation. This is just scratching the surface. We started, AmeriCorps rolled this initiative out at the end of last year. And we were excited because the school, along with the University of Maryland School of Social Work, University of Maryland School of Education was actually highlighted on the AmeriCorps agency's kind of rollout on this. Dr. Rice from the School of Education was part of the rollout, and we're just really excited and proud that our AmeriCorps, of our AmeriCorps members, but also our Maryland institutions are already jumping on board and signing up. I don't know, John, if you're able to drop in the chat, the link to the Schools of National Service, but just as closing, I just wanted to give you a list of the schools, and I think I might be missing one, but right now we have the University of Maryland School of Education, School of Social Work, University of Maryland Baltimore Public Affairs, Salisbury University, Frostburg is part of the list, University of Maryland School of Public Policy, the Do Good Institute, and also the Urban Teachers Center. So we already have a good showing, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I encourage you to reach out to me. We can answer your questions, and that is the end of our presentation.
Thank you all so much.
I have a brief question, Secretary Fielder.
Let's go ahead, Dr. Wilson.
Right. First of all, Nicole and John, thank you very much for the presentation. Do you have any sense of the demographics in the program, because usually programs of this type, whatever, they have a real hard time attracting African American participants, Hispanic participants. Are you seeing the same thing here?
Yeah, actually, I can speak to that. AmeriCorps programs are encouraged, and they already, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted because I'm trying to stop sharing my screen. I don't know if somebody can do that on the other end, but I'll address the question without being distracted. AmeriCorps members are encouraged, and they already do reach out to the communities that they serve. The UMBC Choice Program is a perfect example of that, where they actually have the individuals that are serving in their program, they recruit them from the communities that they serve. Most of the programs in Maryland and AmeriCorps programs at large are encouraged and do already recruit members from their service year.
Nikki, can I chime in on that one too?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, it's such a good question, and something the agency, the AmeriCorps agency, has been working on for years and years. I want to shout out my own AmeriCorps, the program of which I'm an alum, Public Allies, which is a state and national program, but is based in Maryland as well, as a program that really, when the rubber meets the road, they do a good job of recruiting from the community, recruiting diverse candidates, and are really thoughtful about that. We'd be lying if we didn't say there's work to be done, but I believe, especially under the new leadership of the AmeriCorps agency right now, we're going to see that work done, and we're going to improve upon our diversity and inclusion numbers. And certainly with Nikki leading the Maryland Commission, we're doing that work locally too. I'm proud of the work that she's doing.
Okay. Well, John, we will follow up with you. We look forward to figuring out how Morgan also can participate in the National School Service as well.
Thank you so much. I'm dropping some information in the chat, my email, as well as a link to our website that shows the grantees that we fund. And we'll also drop a link to the Schools of National Service so you can take a look at that website. Thank you so much. We wanted to be quick. We didn't want to take up a lot of your time, but there's a lot to unpack here. So thank you, Dr. Dow, for inviting us.
Yes, thank you all so much.
Okay, any other questions for John or Nikki and AmeriCorps? And thank you very much. I do encourage you to be in touch with Dr. Wilson, who's president of Morgan State University, and also Dr. Young is provost, is on the call.
And I will share the slides, or Debbie will circulate the slides, so everybody will have access to circulate onto the campuses.
Okay, great. Jeff, you want to provide the update regarding the gear and relief funds?
Sure. So there have been a few funds sources provided to primarily the community colleges through coronavirus aid relief actions. Two are federal. The first was the Gear Fund, which came out this past summer, $10 million to the community colleges to support students and colleges from the impact of COVID-19. And that funding was to try to provide students enrolled in credit and non-credit workforce development, continuing professional education courses to assist people who might need a career change or workforce training to obtain employment under, as a result of the pandemic. So that $10 million will support workforce development, continuing education courses, and that grant period runs from July 1st, 2020 through December 30th, 2021. And the colleges received their notice of awards back in September, and we're working through that. That's a reimbursed funding source. So what we need to do is have the colleges submit expenditures related to workforce development, continuing education courses, and then we will provide the funding to them based on their reports And to date, we've expended about 12.4% of the $10 million from the reports that have been submitted to us.
And Jeff, that has a quick deadline on it also for expenditure.
That's December 30th, 2021. So that's by the end of the calendar year. And then the Gear 2 fund came out in December, and $7.4 million were allocated to the community colleges for the same purpose as the first set of Gear funds, and then $2.6 million to the private nonprofit Sellinger institutions for COVID-19 related expenditures. The grant period for the community colleges is March 1st, 2021 through March 30th, 2023. And MHEC plans to award the community colleges Gear 2 grants by this Friday. And the private nonprofit institution grant period is January 1st, 2021 through March 30th, 2022. And MHEC plans to send the official documents by Wednesday this week. And then on the state side, the Relief Act of 2021, the Recovery for the Economy, Livelihoods, Industries, Entrepreneurs, and Families Act of 2021 was passed by the General Assembly and signed into law by Governor Hogan on February 15th and established the Recovery Now Fund. And under this fund, Governor Hogan allocated $8.8 million to the locally governed community colleges and another $1.2 million to Baltimore City Community College, again to support similar activities, the same activities as the 2 Gear fund from the federal side support. So that's workforce training, workforce development, continuing education courses. We sent out applications last week. We received them Friday, and we're planning to make official awards of this fund. Now we can make these awards up front because it's state funding. It doesn't have the reimbursement requirement that the federal funding does. So we're going to make the awards this week to the community colleges.
Okay, and the other one, of course, is the new federal relief fund that's just been signed, and details we're following once we'll share everything as quickly as we receive them. Any questions? Thank you, Jeff. That was very good review. Any questions?
You're welcome.
All right, going once, going twice. Legislative update, Lee.
Good morning, everyone. As you know, today we are 30 days out from the end of session. Monday is crossover. There's all kinds of excitement. There are a couple of higher ed bills scheduled for hearings in the opposite house the end of this week, but there's one bill I wanted to bring to your attention that is ready to move. That's Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 1. On Friday, Senate Budget and Taxation Committee put House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1 in the same posture. So they agreed with the House amendments. So the only move left is for it to go back to the House. House concurs with the House with the amendments the Senate put on it, and they're ready to go to the governor.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I don't know if this question is for you, Lee, or for the secretary, but there's language in there that requires a study of the program approval process in general. Have you started to think about what that might look like, and would it be possible to include MICUA as well, as we're not enumerated in the bill, but obviously program approval impacts us as well?
No, that's a good question. As you probably noted, as maybe all of you did, that there was an amendment to the bill that would require that it's not just a self-study. Now, it's going to require an outside consultant, and I think that changes and it doesn't really broaden the perspective as far as I'm concerned, but until the consultant is on board, I won't know how broad and in-depth it's going to be, but I would think that we need every segment, everybody represented in this. If we're going to get it right, it's an opportunity to really update some, potentially change some things as we lean into all of this. So, the bill also has, the required a settlement of a coalition case. So there's a lot of boilerplate language that I think still has to be worked on. Lee, and you can add any clarification on that.
No, I only want to clarify the House amendment that you already did.
Okay. I don't know in terms of timing of that either. Lee, maybe you could help with that in terms of if the funding doesn't start until fiscal year 23, but the bills with amendments contemplate the internal reviews and settlement agreement, what is the timing on those things? And who controls the appointments of consultants, retains consultants, and so forth?
Well, the hiring of the consultant for the study is the responsibility of DLS.
Okay.
And this is an emergency bill.
All right. So all that should move forward. Dr. Wilson, you're on mute, sir, but please, yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick question as well. Lee, are you hearing any chatter at all about moving up the appropriation perhaps to FY22 instead of FY23 in light of the infusion of dollars the state is getting from the rescue plan?
No, I haven't, but it's also possible that that's part of the discussion. And as you know, the House Budget Subcommittees held decision hearings last week, and they have not reported out to the full committee yet. And I understand that part of that discussion is because of the infusion of the federal funds. So I think there's a lot of discussion around additional funding in Annapolis right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the consultant that you're talking about is in House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1, or is in a different bill?
Yes. No, they're in both bills.
They're both bills. The bills are the same now, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that was an amendment that the speaker requested to be put on Senate Bill 1 when it was in the House. And then on Friday, B&T conformed House Bill 1, which they had, which didn't have the amendment yet, to Senate Bill 1.
Okay, Lee, can you just send that to me? I don't think I've seen it yet.
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you.
I do have a question for Secretary Fielder. So in light of the fact that this is imminent in terms of the passage of the bill, the $577 million bill, and the program duplication aspect of that, and the responsibility on the part of MHEC to build out this unit, have you given any thought to how you see that happening in collaboration with higher ed in the state?
No, I think that's a very good question, very appropriate question. We've had internal discussions in terms of trying to say, what is the timing that the legislation will require? And that's, again, until we get it through these subcommittees and have final agreements and see what passes, we won't know, because the emergency bill could advance both funding and review of consultants, and we're open to working on all of them. This is something that needs to be implemented as fast as we possibly can, but done in a manner that is respectful for everyone involved and embraces each one of our institutions in a manner that we want going forward. And I think I'm not trying to give you blurry language. I'm trying to be as specific as we can in the sense that this is, contemplating a settlement that's been going on for 15 years and wrapping your arms around it in a manner that provides the support of what needs to happen with the funding is so critical to get it right.
So if I would make a suggestion, which I know you won't travel down anyway, I think it may be beneficial to think about this segmental advisory board council as being the first step at that discussion. I guess what I'm asking is, in thinking about this, and with all due respect to the University System of Maryland, I just really would not want us to be reacting to something that has been put together by one sector and not really having all the sectors at the table simultaneously to think about what that might look like.
No, I agree, and that's why, the umbrella organization of MHEC is very much involved in this. It has to be all the segments. I mean, it has to have the representation across the board if we're going to get this right. Otherwise, in another 3, 5, whatever years, we'd be right back in the same position. And I don't believe any one of us want to be dealing with this long term. If we have an opportunity to settle this and get it right going forward. So we'll need input from each of the institutions that are involved. Anybody from MAC, MICUA system, any thoughts on this? I mean, we can watch it, we'll monitor it, we'll make sure all of you are aware as things move forward. That's the reason we put this on the agenda this morning, and we usually don't have a legislative update. But this is so huge, not just in terms of the funding, $500 million, but what we may be able to do, when I say may, because we have to have concurrence on what do we do on academic duplication. As you know, right now, it feels like an old mimeograph machine. As soon as somebody writes something, there's 3 copies and somebody else doesn't want it. And we've got to move forward in order to support the innovation that needs to occur in this state. Because I do think that this has lingered way too long and has hurt innovation across all our sectors, community colleges, 4 years, 2 years, public and private, that institutions have not moved forward with innovative program proposals for fear that somebody else will object, or through whatever other things prevent it from occurring. It hurts on staff recruitment, it hurts on recruiting top faculty, researchers, provosts and deans. I mean, all the people we recruited are excellent. I'm not diminishing anybody's capability, but what I'm saying, I think we're at the point that we need to really embrace an opportunity here and move forward. But it'll be done.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you on that. I certainly hope that as we get into this discussion, that we could agree on some principles.
Yes.
Well, and at the top of our list would be things like equity and respect. And if we don't start there with regard to whatever procedures we come up with, then we're going to be right back where we started. But we cannot move in this space in the future if, for example, we don't have across all of the sectors of higher education in Maryland a manner of respect for each other and for the missions of the different sectors. We're coming to the table thinking that one mission of an institution is greater than another, then I think we're going to have a problem.
No, I agree with what you're saying, and that's the reason when we talk about the state plan providing access and success, the access is meant to bring as broad of educational programs across the state to all the citizens as we possibly can. And that's got to be done with respect, both granted respect because the institutions are recognized, and earned respect by working together in collaborative and coordinated manner instead of some of the fiefdoms that we've seen in the past. And I do say in the past because I do believe that that has passed, and I'm very hopeful that we can move forward in a manner of the collaboration and appropriate sharing as we move forward. This is a long separate conversation. I would say set up a separate meeting for, but it's a good conversation. Other comments?
I'll just say to everyone's point, Mickey was happy to contribute in any way that's meaningful or helpful. So happy to be kept in the loop and happy to participate.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to take it that everybody has already raised their hand and volunteered for not only participation but conversation. That's the only way we're going to get this done. And we're the quote unquote experts. So it's going to be up to us. And I appreciate Dr. Wilson, you raising those points. Okay, hearing no other. Lee, anything else on the legislative agenda?
No,
Okay,
just like I said, 30 more days. Stay tuned.
stay tuned. Yes, I know we have some shifts here. And next we're going to talk about enrollment projections. Emily, are you going to cover that, or has Barbara joined us?
So Barbara is joining us by phone, and I will share my screen so that the memo is up. So Barbara, if you're on, you're on.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am indeed joining by phone. This is a bit of a tag team. Good to be with all of you today. I don't anticipate taking much of your time, but you had the memo distributed to you last week from Debbie. You have it before you. The information we're sharing is that due to the drivers that we cite within the memo and in the attachment regarding the sort of, the disparity in the data, that we all know that we have some very immediate COVID effects on the data, and then we have, as you see from the attachment, some data that we rely on for the model that are likely they just need to be settled before we're sure how they best fit and what effects they might have on the model, such things as high school projections and so forth that were all done before COVID even hit. We have decided to move forward with utilizing the projections, the 10-year projections that were created last year as the basis for the 2021 to 2030 enrollment projections. We ran these discussions by DVM and DLS, and they were in full support of this. The logistics of this are such that the 2029 figures that currently exist in the report would be replicated again for a 2030 10-year timeline. We know from talking with Jeff and Dan Schuster on the finance side, and of course looking at our state statute, we know the 10-year piece is significant for what institutions need to be doing in terms of their planning. So I'm here to field any questions and take in any concerns, but that is what I wanted to share with you today.
Are there any questions? Okay,
And
thank you, Barbara.
For clarification, this is, just an update to let everybody know, because this is an important factor for our public institutions. If there's any concerns or questions on it, please direct them over to Barbara. And like the memo says, we plan to present them the enrollment projections in one of the upcoming commission meetings.
Emily, would there be an opportunity to go on the what I call west side of COVID, not knowing where institutions are going to land, for some kind of revisit of this, perhaps in a year or so?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So really, what we're doing is we're just pressing pause on rerunning the regression models, pressing pause because some of the data we use is really impacted by COVID. Wait for the dust to settle. Next year, midwinter, we'll reconsider what makes the most sense to move forward, and certainly involve segments as appropriate.
Okay,
Joe, did
any
you have a
other
question?
questions, comments? Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
On the agenda, we have a brief discussion about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and potential best practices. I do know that, we've sent out the cultural diversity report and indicated this time that we'd like to look for some best practices. I think that, Sarah, you had a question about this to put it on the agenda. I can tell you, MHEC, that we've started our own DEI work with us. We've had 2 go-to meetings, full departmental participation from all our staff. The second one had to do with unconscious bias, and we're working on a third one now that will be directly addressing the diversity, equity, inclusion. And then beyond that, their hopes are, or my plans are, that we, again, continue in the dialogue and start examining what rules, regs, guidelines, applications, and so forth that contain anything that is not just, in writing, but are there perceptions that some of our processes are preventing access? And that's a harder one, but we'll get to it. So with that, Sarah, do you have something specific?
Sure, thank you. No, I just was really trying to figure out what else is going on in terms of bringing this issue to the fore, seeing if there was anything that could be done as a higher ed group. I don't know the answer to these questions. I was just curious. Each of my campuses is doing their own thing. There's not really anything going on organized at the MICUA level. So that's why I was kind of interested in what might be going on with USM or MAC, and then particularly at Morgan and St. Mary's. If you guys have anything that you could give me that I could take back to my campuses in terms of things that you're seeing are being particularly effective or not effective. This is just also a conversation about things you've tried. To the secretary's point about written might not move the needle. We'd really like to move the needle. And it's not just about, reporting or getting the student body. We also want to work on getting our faculty and our administration. And we've seen a lot of legislation this session relating to ways to push us to diversify more. And so I just want to make sure that next session, if there are bills like this again, that either we don't need bills like this, which would be the ideal case, or that we have data and we can show that we're invested in this and we're leaning in. And so I just really wanted to have the conversation, and I thought it might be helpful actually to have this as a recurring theme on our meetings, to keep talking about it. Because again, I think it would be good if we were a higher ed community on some of these issues.
So I really endorse Sarah's point of view that I think it is propitious for us to, in this climate, at least have what I call a higher education-wide discussion, maybe strategy, maybe some gatherings around the space. Is not going away. I was struck, I think Secretary Field, I may have put this on your radar, about, 4 months ago, a fairly large private foundation reached out to me, Freeman, and Daryl, and basically wanted to have, to President Roboski, President Pines, and myself, and wanted to have private conversation with us around this issue, and particularly in Maryland. And they were not necessarily coming at it the way in which we have traditionally come at it. They wanted to know, look, how are you doing in this space with regard to successor leadership plan? How are you coming at this with regard to who's in the pipeline to become the chair of your chemistry department or the chair of your engineering department, whatever. And who is in the pipeline to become your vice provost and your provost, right? And how are you guys, once again, Secretary Field, and how are you collaborating? I mean, you got Morgan sitting over here, you got College Park, you got, how are you collaborating across these 3 research institutions in this space? And shockingly, we never had a conversation about it. But it took that foundation to push us to a point where we had 2 hours of unbelievable dialogue. And they were so impressed by that they followed up now with our respective, I think Dr. Young is our representative of Morgan, Freeman had a representative, and Daryl had a representative. And now they're trying to figure out what could be a model for just these 3 institutions around DEI. So I do think that there is a great opportunity for us to have some intellectually honest conversations around this. My last comment is, there's a group out of Washington called MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow. Is headed by John Rice, who well regarded in the corporate space, but gave that up and realized that there's some issues going on in corporate America on these issues. They don't know how to do it. They don't know that all of what we're hearing from the Silicon Valley to all of our firms in Maryland is that corporations really want to embrace equity, but they don't know what that looks like, beyond trying to throw money at institutions, right? And so this organization is now involved in bringing together a series of Fortune 500 companies and they're putting in place these elaborate kinds of ways for corporations to rethink equity and diversity in some very impressive ways. And now they're moving into the higher ed space. And so there may be an opportunity just to have an informal conversation, perhaps with someone like John Rice, to at least kind of look at that organization and see if maybe we could have an informal conversation with them about what they are doing and whether it has any kind of implication for higher education. So I said too much and I will be quiet.
No, I appreciate what you had to say. And I can tell you from my point of view, I know that many of the institutions have established within their own institution different diversity equity offices as well as trainings for their staff. And that's one part, but I think what we're talking about here is much greater than that. The reason we've started on this 6-8 months ago was the fact that it needs to be much broader than one institution. And I think that, Joe, just 1 second. The corporate world, as you know, several years ago, push from the feds on the inclusion and actual metrics of how many minorities and women are on every board. Well, to me, that leads to a very, very simple conduit of why can't we, as higher education in the state of Maryland, identify those candidates, within our own groups that could be on private boards, and do whatever is necessary to provide the communication and or training that could be very helpful, so that it becomes in a way, a hotbed for change and inclusion in our private sector, as well as what we already have in our public sector. And Joe, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to comment, first of all, that our Board of Regents has given the system some really sincere challenges around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But more than that, I will look into what might be most helpful. The USM is part of the National Association of System Heads and 44 systems around the country in what is called an equity action framework. We're one of the primary drivers of that framework that really challenges institutions in higher education to look at equity in many different kinds of ways and assess yourselves on which part of the framework you're actually working in, but it's very broad and deep. I'll see what I can put together to share with the people on this call, since the National Association of System Heads and that group has been working on that for more than a year now.
No, this is all a good conversation, and I know, Sarah, I think maybe your original email had, if we had accumulated any lists of facilitators that have been used. And I've got one. I can send you Milton's contact information that we're relying on. I have talked to Danette Howard, who's at Lumina now, and she's agreed to work with us going forward at MHEC on these issues. And so participated in a webinar just a week ago with Dean Rice from College Park, Dean of Education, and that college has done a lot of work with their own facilitators on campus to actually address these issues. So I think there are lots of pockets of really good practices. And one of the key things that Dr. Dow and Dr. Smertz had been looking at for the last 3 years is looking at institutions that have narrowed the gap for student success by gender and race. And that there's been some significant gains in individual institutions. And when we dig a little deeper, we find that it's primarily based upon intrusive advising and the use of software monitoring and supports, counseling and mentoring services. Well, those things, it doesn't do any good just for me to know it, quite frankly. I've got to come up with a way that we can get this out there, whether it's a separate post, a website, or whatever, so this can become something that can, penetrate all our institutions. I know Morgan has their own success officers, student success officers, and some of the other institutions do also. So those things are known behind the scenes, but they need to be more front and present.
Hey, Secretary Phillip, if you picked up the Baltimore Sun this morning, the front page article.
Not yet.
Okay, the front page article is about the Walters Museum. And
It's about what?
The Walters Museum, one of our anchor institutions, prominent institutions worldwide, and about the fact that the founder was a Confederate supporter, and then that comes, of course, on the heels of what our good friend Ron Daniels and the faculty and staff at Hopkins, and so once again, I serve on the board of AAC&U with Lynn Pascarella, and we just don't know in higher education how to have these conversations, right? It's messy. It is so messy because as we dig deeper, we're going to keep finding this.
Yes.
And so, in addition to what I call the checking the box approach to DEI, which is how many students do you have that are non this and non that, and how many faculty? That's, in my view, like dean counting.
Yeah.
It's the tough conversations around this. And so what is going to be the role of higher ed and what I call knitting the country together and preserving and elevating democracy, right? And that might be an opportunity for us. I just thought about this, like, I just don't know where to go with this. I don't know how do we think about curricular, in a way that you can say to, maybe Maryland can take the lead here to say, we're going on a path here where we're going to be uncovering a lot of stuff. And so what do we do with that? And help to follow this notion. And I don't think you'll find any clarity in all of higher education on that right now. I think everybody's struggling.
The how, the why, I think really is just the start of the basic discussion about leadership. We really need to have very aggressive and honest and naked discussions about race, inequity, and all those words that we were raised to don't say that out loud. It's going to hurt somebody's feelings. Well, those kind of things, we got to get past it. And in higher ed can take the lead on this, because the one thing that we're supposed to be doing in higher ed is, for lack of a better way to put it, exposing individuals on the campus, faculty, staff, and students, in new ideas, and ideas of innovation. Innovation doesn't come from homogeneity. It comes from different points of view. And those, we've got to be the hotbed for that. And there's no reason that we can't start that with a discussion and move it forward. Are there going to be metrics? Do we want, like you said, the bean counters to say, well, okay, well, that was 1.5%, and that's not enough. It needs to be 2.1, whatever. Well, those things are going to happen, but that's how you can say, well, I could jump 1 foot today, and tomorrow I'll jump 1 foot and 2 more inches, or whatever it is. But the main thing, it has to start with an honest discussion. Are we willing to embrace this? Are we willing to use this settlement, that's going through the legislature right now, as an opportunity to have the honest discussion, not about where we've been, but where do we need to be? And there's toes that get stepped on, and I know mine will, and that's okay. That's part of this growing, and learning that the true word when you say diversity and inclusion is embrace. Then there's a lot of, maybe it's fear, maybe it's just, ignorance of each other, maybe whatever it is what it is. And any one of us can turn the TV on and see it every night, see it every day, listen to the news, and And at some point, it's more damn depressing than the pandemic is. So, I'm one for, let's just, sit down, start with a small group and build it out of how do we do these things? How do we get the discussions? And then what are the action, are there needs for actions at some point? Well, yeah, there will be. That's why we started at MHEC. What do we have in rules, regs, and guidelines, applications that are preventing people for access and success? So, sorry. So I know this is a wonderful conversation, and I'll have to put it on an agenda as we move forward. I think we tickled it under the legislative update, but this is much larger than all of us to move it forward. Sarah, the next one had to do with the prior learning credit discussion. You want to ask?
Sure. Thank you. So this is coming a little bit from a task force that has been introduced this session by Delegate Solomon, and I don't want to your point about stepping on toes, I don't want to steal anything from Lee here, but the task force bill itself is not actually what I'm asking about. I'm a little bit new here. Sometimes I feel like I've been on the job for 10 years, and sometimes I feel like I just started yesterday. So I just wanted to know a little bit about what MHEC has done, or what this group has done in the space of credit for prior learning already, and what's on tap, if anything, to be done if this task force doesn't pass. I just kind of wanted an update to know where we are on it, and then just to see where the folks on this call are on it, because I don't think that all of my schools are on the same page either. So just trying to figure out, I also don't know where this task force came from, if someone on this call requested it or if MHEC requested it. So if someone could just give me a little more feedback on that, that's kind of what I'm looking for here. We just, in the interest of full disclosure, we've submitted testimony that asks that we be included if the task force is to go forward, as our schools are obviously wrapped up in the soup on this as well. And I don't know why we weren't included, but I'm not upset about it. I'm just trying to gather information to be fully informed.
Okay, good. Emily?
Sure. So we haven't done much in the past on academic for credit for prior learning. Personally, I see this as a great opportunity for us to take a look at our regulations, revise them accordingly, inform institutions about the opportunities that are out there, because I think there's some gray area, and not all institutions are taking advantage of even the current regulations. So should this go forward, I see this as an opportunity to really hone in on some of those discussions and make appropriate changes. I know a lot of your campuses already do a variety of options for academic, but I worry it is not standardized. And when we do talk about the equity issue, I'm very concerned that institutions are not implementing their policies appropriately or consistently among students, and that students aren't aware of it. So I would hope that this work group would be able to look at those issues as well. So to your question, certainly, yeah.
Do we need this task force though? Can't we do this without the task force? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. And I'm wondering if Emma can just go to Delegate Solomon and say, we hear you, let us take care of it. Do we need legislators involved? And that's a bigger question here, but I as being former staff, I really don't love millions of task forces, and it feels a little bit like, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So we at Morgan, of course, we're not, the impetus behind this, though we embrace credit for prior learning. We have academic degree programs here where we have come through training with the Center for Experiential Learning, our faculty have, so we know how to do that. And we fully support this effort, with no hesitancy at all.
So thank you, President Wilson. I think I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say this, but we are equally frustrated by the number of things that get legislated, task forces included. So certainly, yeah, Sarah, you're absolutely right. We could do this on our own without the legislature getting involved. But here we are, and this is what we are contending with. So if the bill does not pass and there is interest from the Segmental Advisory Council to proceed with such a work group, we will do that. We've done that for a number of issues previously. The two that stick out is on distance ed, revising regulations and review around distance ed, and then certainly the request from from MAC and the community colleges around applied baccalaureates. So we've done this and we can do it again, but right now we're looking at the legislative request. To the point of, I note that it lists representatives from all the community colleges, and then a representative from USM. Clearly MICUA is out. You have my intent that should that not be corrected, this would be a very inclusive work group, and while representatives are listed out, it would be detrimental to everybody in higher ed to keep it only to what is listed. So know that as it's set up, I would hope that we'll be able to, pragmatically, I foresee this group meeting monthly, starting off as quickly as possible once session ends and the summer starts. So, because I think there's a lot of issues to address. Kind of the big one is military credit, dual enrollment credit. So I've already started to formulate kind of meeting topics, what the purpose of each discussion will be, what's the goal, and try working through the recommendations in live form, then to kind of just talk for a while and then work on recommendations. So certainly we'll see in the next month, but yeah, our next segmental meeting, I'll probably have more to present on this issue. In terms of where it comes from, my understanding is actually it's motivated from College Board. They are really interested in, so while not explicitly stated in the task force, looking at AP credit and the awarding of threes, awarding credit for prior learning when a student has received a test score of a 3 as opposed to a 4 or 5. College Board has presented certainly to MHEC, I think even to Segmental maybe a couple years ago, Faculty Advisory Council, that they have data, again, on this equity issue, that students, particularly minority students, often score in the 3 to 4 range. But when schools do not accept that 3, you're harming those students. So minority students typically score in the 3 to 4 range, but the 3, regardless race, ethnicity, gender, urbanicity, all of those other factors, those students that score 3 or 4 do just as well on the subsequent college course than a 5 compared to a 5, suggesting that a score of a 3 is just as good as a 4 or 5 in terms of being prepared to do the next level of college work. So an equity issue there. So they'll be involved. I've already had a conversation with them of their intent to be involved, but I will say publicly, this is not just about AP credit. It can't be. It needs to be about all credit for prior learning, but that will certainly be a piece to it. And that's my understanding of the motivation behind the task force. And I'll stop there.
I just want to be clear in terms of what I said. I said that Morgan is supportive of credit for prior learning, or concept, not necessarily the legislative process by which it may happen.
That was so helpful. That was exactly what I wanted to know. We've tried to get in touch with the sponsor a couple of times, and I know he's super busy. So very appreciative to all of you. And yes, that your plan sounds great, Emily. So as far as MICUA is concerned, thank you. Thank you very much.
Secretary Fielder, you're on mute.
I said I want to give a gold star to everyone who helped get this achieved. We got one answer today you know, this is what Sarah needed to know. So I'm delighted with this one. Yes, we got one move. All right, let's forward, Donna with the MD caps.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. First, starting off with updates on behalf of OSFA. These updates are all for informational purposes. Would like to inform everyone that we launched the electronic file upload feature in MD caps, which allows students to upload documents directly through their student portal rather than to submit them to our office by mail or email. To date, since going live at the end of February, we have received more than 4,500 documents from students. So we are continuing with the outreach. High schools as well as institutions and nonprofit organizations are all aware that this new tool is available. So we just wanted to let you guys know that it was successfully rolled out, and students can only upload documents if they are required to do so. So that is one major change when we moved into this new process, because in the past we had students that would submit documents that were not required. So with this new feature, it is definitely streamlining a lot of processes for us, and we just want to continue to promote it and share with you guys that it is going well.
Yeah, and I need to make a comment and compliment Donna on this. If you think about the fact that they're now not going to be handling 300,000 pages of information every year, that's phenomenal. And with her small staff, I can tell you, go into this space and look at the literally dozens and hundreds of boxes of pages. I mean, this is a phenomenal step forward. It's going to make it more transparent for our students, parents, as well as the institutions. So I really appreciate that good work, Donna.
Thank you. The next update is concerning the Delegate Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Awards program regulations. On February 24th, we took before the commission proposed amendments to the EEA program regulations. They were approved by the commission for publication. So wanted to let you guys know that they are approved. They are not yet available through ALR for review at this time. And once they become available, we will definitely let everyone know when they're available for public comment. After the public comment period ends, we will then take the regulations back to the commission for final adoption. And then once they go through the final adoption process, we will then move forward with the next step of sending information out to institutions to see which institutions plan to participate in doing verification starting with the 22-23 academic year. So please stay tuned for more information about that. And I know this is not on the agenda, so Secretary, I hope it's okay if I add this to the agenda. But why I am here is I would like to let everyone know that OSFA has also implemented virtual appointments. So we are now able to service students virtually. We have a web page that is dedicated to virtual appointments. We also have listed it on our home page of the Impact website. We have already started to notify our external entities. Communication will be going out to institutions today to let them know that we are available by virtual appointments on certain days and certain times to service anyone. So we definitely want to let you guys know as well that we do have virtual appointments that are established for OSFA. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, I saw a hand up for a second there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say also, Donna, thank you so much. Donna was overwhelmingly patient and exceedingly responsive to us as we tried to figure out those Rawlings regulations. And I'm very, very appreciative, as are all of our schools. I don't know which of them will actually opt in, but you did great work and you accelerated the timeline for us, and just so many thanks to you. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And again, thank you to all the institutions for feedback. We greatly appreciate hearing from you guys, and we just look forward to moving forward. So thank you so much.
You know, what's really neat is to think about all the positive comments and feedbacks. And a few years ago, I couldn't have reported the same, I'll put it that way. So thank you. Okay, Emily, this next one, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I'm just gonna rattle off for a little bit on a couple of other updates that I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of some recent changes and announcements and requests. So the first one, the state assigned student identifier, SACID. As you may know, SACID is a Maryland Maryland appointed ID that public K through 12 students receive. MHEC have typically asked institutions to include a SACID number with data collections when it's specific to a student. Historically, part of the reason for that is so that we could link student information together, particularly from institution to institution. And then certainly as MLDS has gotten bigger, it provides additional data marker for MLDS to link K through 12 data to higher ed data. However, MLDS, along with our internal mechanisms, we have found better ways to link students. And we find that institutions are challenged in figuring out the SACID appropriately. Some students don't know their SACID, and for students out of state, the SACID doesn't apply to them. So we've heard from your IR folk, from your registrar, from your admissions offices, that this is a huge burden and we're not getting good data from it. So we have since informed your IR folks that they no longer need to collect this number and no longer need to report it to MHEC. The big takeaway, the message that I want to give you today, and that we told your IR folks, we really need good social security numbers. That is going to be a clincher in terms of being able to link data. So refocusing attention and efforts with the appropriate departments to get the correct social security number and not submit blanks is going to make our data all the more stronger when we start talking about longitudinal analyses. So just a heads up on that so that you're aware of what's going on your campus.
And Emily.
Yes, sir.
Legally, as I recall, as we were putting together MLDS, we had this discussion about social security numbers and how we transmit that, protections in place. And so we don't have to go down that path again if now we have to use social security numbers. Everything is above board, and institutionally we can do that without much legal pushback.
Absolutely. We already collect social security number. What we're asking now is deprioritize the SACID and prioritize collecting the social security number. So yeah, functionally there's, we've been collecting social security number from day one, if you will.
Okay, any other discussion on this?
I have a couple more updates, Secretary.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Does the SACID is something that's assigned at the K-12 level too, though, right?
Yes.
Is K-12 also going to go back to using social security number only?
No, K-12 will maintain the SACID. We're just saying colleges are no longer required to collect SACID for the purposes of MHEC and MLDS use.
And MLDS is fine with that?
Yep, it's actually motivated by MLDS because they get such bad SACIDs. It's incomplete for all of your out-of-state students. There's no SACID, so it becomes a useless tool for matching.
Except the purpose of it was to match the Maryland student, and so it's not useless for the Maryland students.
And MLDS has better ways now to match.
That's the part I'm missing, because I to your point, Dr. Wilson, I was there for those early conversations about protecting data, and they were robust, lively discussions. And the SACID was both a solution to privacy protection, but also responsive to the fact that it was the easiest way to get K-12 and higher ed to communicate with each other. So I just want to make sure that we're not.
MLDS is,
Dr. Wilson addressed, but I'm also worried about the communication issue between K-12 and higher ed. But if you say it's not a problem, I trust you.
MLDS was fully involved in this decision and is in full support of it.
Yeah, and if MLDS is in full support of it, I'm okay with it. But as Sarah indicated, one of the driving purposes of this was longitudinal studies, right? Where at any point, we could trace a cohort of students in terms of their performance back to the classes they took in 5th grade to a teacher in the 3rd grade. And so if MLDS is saying, for those students in Maryland who now don't have to, those institutions of higher ed, they don't have to do the SACID, and is not going to interfere with the ability of researchers to come in and look at this longitudinal, then I'm okay with that.
Yep.
That's
No,
what
yep. We do not lose any of that ability to do those. And in fact, I've been told on this issue, we'll have better ability to do it because MLDS has created other ways to match students and match student information appropriately.
Dr. Wilson, it might help if I explain our very close working relationship with MLDS is in Kellogg. Dr. Kellogg serves with a split appointment for MLDS and MHEC, and I've served as chair of MLDS now for 5 years or so. So we have a very close working relationship to make sure that we're seeing the big picture. Okay, any more discussion? Emily, anything else?
Couple more things. Student Learning Outcome Assessment Report, SLOR report. This is a report that we do every 5-6 years. We just circulated a memo regarding it. I just want to articulate what we are looking for. So this is essentially a meta assessment of assessments. How do your institutions figure out whether or not your learning assessments are actually assessing what they're supposed to assess? So there's a general survey we're asking all institutions to respond to, but then there is an opt-in option to provide brief narratives around the development of learning assessments that are specific at a program level. So certainly middle states is a big driver in developing learning assessment tools at the institutional level, but we are certainly aware at the program level, programmatic accreditors will drive those decisions as well. So we're asking institutions if you can provide a case study around kind of a successful or interesting or not so interesting experience with a program accreditor around learning assessment, providing a brief narrative on that experience, and we have a number of prompting questions for that. And then similarly, for a program that does not have a programmatic accreditor, how institutionally do you develop those learning outcome assessments, and what does that look like? So that we scratch a little bit under the surface and get into learning assessments at the program level, not just at the institutional level. And that is due at the beginning of August. We're hoping this is not a heavy lift, that you would be able to go to your dean or department chair or the individual who is involved or the group of individuals involved in identifying learning assessments and evaluating them and having them, again, just provide a narrative of what that experience has looked like for them. Okay. That was my second thing. Third thing, academic common market. Switching gears, academic common market allows students to attend as an out-of-state student to attend with in-state tuition. Maryland participates in the Southern Regional Education Board, so academic common market runs through the Southern Regional Education Board. Many institutions in Maryland participate, but we recognize this may be a good opportunity for you to bring in out-of-state students at in-state tuition and attract your unique programs that are unique among the 15 SREB states. So we're doing a presentation, April 22nd. This is for both institutions that already do academic common market and institutions that aren't really engaged with it or don't know how to expand it or maximize on it. We'll have a representative from SREB, Jackie Cade, who is an analyst who runs it within our agency, will also be presenting on how to get it involved, programs that are of interest that we see students leaving for. So keep an eye out for that invitation. Jackie is primarily working with your academic common market contacts, But again, I wanted segments to be aware that this was something that was happening. So keep an eye out, and I'll send you more information as that develops. But April 22nd is the date of that presentation.
And just a quick question. Is Maryland the farthest northern state in the SREB 13 states?
I believe Delaware is also part of SREB, but I don't.
Delaware.
Yes, Delaware is. There's a total of 16 states. This was started in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that we did, or Emily's group did about a year ago, was actually to accumulate a list of programs that we use to present to the regions, programs that have the most participants that are unique to Maryland, meaning that the students go out of state to one of these 16 states to take an academic program with the thought of, when you get to enough critical mass, why don't we have one of our institutions create that academic program? So we're trying.
I have a follow-up question, Secretary Fielder. So obviously, I'm concluding that you presented this to the USM regions.
Yes.
Not to the St. Mary's Board or to the Morgan region.
I did it at their request, yes, sir.
You did, okay. So the question here is, so when we've been discussing this at Morgan, because we get about 30% of our students from out of state, but of those 30% that come from out of state, about 70% of those are coming north of us with, whatever, about 30% coming south of us, right? And so when we look at places like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, is it under the purview of our own governing board to decide whether it wants to extend reciprocity for Morgan to states that are not part of the SREB common reciprocity states? I mean, is it a constitutional-based decision is what I'm asking here?
No, this is a state-based organization, like I said, that with the 16 states that agreed and paid membership, and I'm the representative that attends our regular meetings for SREB. I can raise those questions. We can talk offline on that. All right.
Yeah, President Wilson, I will, certainly do some research and see if there's any prohibition on that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if you just do a search on SREB on Wikipedia, it'll pull up the 16 states really quickly, so you can actually look at academic programs in those states. So
I just put the list in the chat.
all right, great. Thank you, Chip. See, we're quick now. Wow. All right. What else do we have? One more.
One more update. I'm sorry. State plan. I won't belabor.
Emily knows this. I've nicknamed her One More.
One more.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. That's okay.
Thank you, Secretary Fielder. State plan, Debbie circulated our slides that we have presented to the commission at the January commission meeting. It's information at this point. Yep. It does list our proposed 8 new priorities. And I say new in quotations because there are a couple of priorities that remain that the writing groups felt needed to stay and we needed to continue prioritizing. But there are some new priorities and some reorganization. So take a look through the slide deck. We are a little bit behind schedule. I was hoping we'd have a document out for public comment this month. We'll probably have it out in the next few weeks. We're working through it. So certainly segments will be aware. It will be a quick turnaround for public comment. We'll probably provide about a 2-week turnaround, and it's big ideas public comment, but still nonetheless an opportunity to re-engage stakeholders. So that's where we are with the state plan. Take a look at the priorities. If you have any immediate feedback that you would like to share, please let me know sooner rather than later. I'm happy to include them and see how we can address any of your concerns or additions. And I'll stop there. I'm officially done. Thank you, Secretary and segmental leaders.
Great, great. Other discussion items? Any questions? Anybody?
Mr. Secretary, Bernie Sadusky, I have a question. If Lee Towers is still on?
Yes, he's still on. He'll just turn his camera's off, but He's on mute. Here he is.
So apparently this morning, we're receiving tax guidelines from the comptroller's office. And one of the things that's being taxed under the new digital projects, sales tax on digital products, is continuing education classes, seminars, conferences, graduate school classes. Is that a mistake? Was that intentional? I can't imagine in an economy that's saying that 20% of our folks need to go back and get reskilled because the jobs they lost will not be there. And now we're going to charge them a sales tax on continuing education classes. And the same thing on a college lecture or charge for viewing a course or lecture online by a college or graduate school is now subject to sales tax and use tax. I know we missed it, so this is like, confession.
I'm not aware
was
of
that
it. I'll
always
have to
it,
check
and we
on
were
that.
just silent on it, or is everyone aware of it?
I just
All
found
right,
out about this over the
so,
weekend.
Lee, he's put out business. Go ahead, Sarah. Help me.
I don't have a lot of help. I just heard about this over the weekend and I was going to look into it today. It came to me in the form of someone asking if the corrective bill that's going through it's apparently related to the veto override. And they're saying that maybe in the corrective bill that's going through, we want to exempt education and training, which I think is what you're talking about. I have not looked closely at this, but it has just been brought to my attention over the weekend. So I'm happy to work on it, but I don't know a lot about it.
I don't know if this has been brought to our attention. And so, Secretary, you or Dr. Dow, send me a copy of what it is we are discussing so we can shape an opinion about it as well.
Yeah, and Bernie, thanks for the heads up. That's a quick turn. We'll get on top of that.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with this too, so I'm going to lean on Lee.
All right. Okay. All right. Lee, help. Let us know what, if there's any room for exclusion here, will you? Okay.
Will do.
Mr. Secretary, before we adjourn, can I bring up one other thing?
Sure.
So at the I'm trying to take Emily's nickel name away from her. There's at the federal level, I don't know how involved all of you have been. We've been pretty involved in advocating for doubling the Pell Grant maximum. And there might be an opportunity. Some of my colleagues in other states have started to approach this as an advocacy effort from the higher ed community in their state that's united, rather than one-off advocacy. I'm happy to write the letter if this group is interested in that and have everyone sign it, or just drop it. I've already reached out to every member of the Maryland congressional delegation on behalf of the independent sector, but I think it'll be stronger and more powerful. I'm assuming we're all on the same page on this, but happy to be wrong on that. Well, sad to be wrong on that, but not trying to speak for anyone else. So I just wanted to see if anyone was interested in that.
Yes, we are. From Morgan's perspective, I was on a panel last week with Speaker Pelosi and Congresswoman Alma Adams and about 8 to 10 other congresswomen and congressmen, and this topic came up as well. And so you'll find just tremendous advocacy for this across the HBCU.
Now, Sarah, that's good because I can bring it up at the SHEHO level and the SREB level, and then the chancellor could bring it up on the system-wide leadership. And that then will cover just about every state and then therefore, quote unquote, every institution, hopefully. So we'll get right on that too. So I'll look for your draft then.
Sarah, if you share your draft, then we can act as mediator among all the segments and get it out.
That would be, I would appreciate that. I'll get that to you hopefully in the next day.
Great. Any other discussion? Well, I compliment everybody on very fertile discussions and conversations this morning. I find them uplifting, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to participate, not just in all our metrics and things, but the big pictures too. So the only thing I have for final is April 19th at 10 o'clock is our next scheduled meeting. So if any of you have other items that come up, certainly give me a call anytime. You have my numbers and contacts likewise. Okay? Be safe. How many's had their 2 shots? Anybody? Okay. 1, 2, 3. We've almost have a quorum for double shots. So I think we're going to have a minimum 2-shot party.
At the Secretary's house with appropriate libations, I might add.
You know what, the appropriate libation, you bring your minimum 2-shot in your own bottle, and then we'll see if we have a true trash can party that they used to have in the old days, which were nasty. But,
That would be terrific.
all right,
He does have a bar at his house.
be safe. Be safe.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.